Welcome to the AAF Ad Club Lunch and Learn. This is a series that we developed during COVID for the Ad Club, just to keep people together and informed. And it's a pretty easy platform for people to ask questions and get more personal responses to those questions too. So we've continued it even though COVID is almost over and people are returning back to work. It's still a good platform for us. So we're going to keep it going. So thanks for joining. My name's Tim Bate again. I'm going to be the MC of today's panel, and we're going to introduce Drew Owen and Priscilla McKinney in just a few minutes. Today's topic is all centered around content marketing, the state of content marketing, which is a very broad term today. And so we're going to hear from a couple of experts about how they define that and how they and their process for going to market with content. So let me tell you a little bit about Drew and Priscilla. Drew was born in Springfield, so he's a native. Drew, graduate, has a degree in a BA in business administration and a minor in psychology. Did an internship in Miami where he got into sports marketing or sports representation, I should say. And he did a pretty long stint, 7 years, as a Major League Baseball Players Association certified baseball agent, where he represented 60 players and negotiated over 35 million in contracts. So pretty big deal. Drew came back to Springfield to help launch 417 Biz. He joined Jump 6 as a consultant in 2017, director of sales in 2018, and as they transitioned to BigPixl, he became general manager last year. So please welcome Drew Owen.
Thank you.
Drew.
Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate being invited. Excited about this.
Yeah.
Good to have you.
Great rebrand, Drew. That was a nice job.
Thank you very much. There's a lot of work. It took us 8 months of working through it. People not happy when their name got picked. We did a lot of voting. It was a lot of work. I feel for people that go through rebrands, but it ended up okay.
Good work there. Okay, and also Priscilla McKinney. Probably everyone knows Priscilla. She is the president of the Ad Club, the AAF charter, and has been for a number of years. Priscilla, I don't know how long, but she runs Little Bird Marketing. She got her start. Let's see. Priscilla holds a cultural anthropology degree and a political science degree. Managed a digital credit card processing center in Joplin, or owned it, and that was lost shortly, I think, after the tornado. And so she opened Little Bird Marketing and is now specializing in digital content and lead generation in the marketing research space. And she also teaches people how to be social influencers. So it's exciting to have you here talking about content marketing. Please welcome Priscilla McKinney.
Awesome. This is a good plug to say, hey, who wants to be the next AAF president? Happy to groom you right in.
Right. Good. Okay. So let's get started. You can use the Zoom chat if you want to post a question along the way, but we've got 5 or 6 questions, and we're going to hear from each person, Drew and Priscilla, on the panel, and we'll get this thing going. So I guess the first question, we're going to jump right in, is why content marketing? It's a very broad term, so please help us define that as your company sees it and sells it, and talk about your approach. Can we start with you, Drew?
Sure. As thinking through some of these questions, I feel like, I had the privilege of working under 417 magazine back in 2003. Those locally that know 417 magazine, when it was a stapled magazine, and had 3 separate tours there over the years. And content has always been the name of the game. I don't think it's new, right? I think it's a buzzword that we hear. I think how we digest and absorb our content is the real question. And so when you think of content marketing, the internet is our phones, social media, how we receive that content is really what content marketing is. And the way we approach it here at BigPixl with our team is especially with COVID, is realistically your storefront has become your website. And whether you see a billboard, or I see Valerie, if you're reading SBJ, you know, whatever you're doing, when you're learning and taking in content, what you do is you do a lot of research, right? And you go to the web and you look up that company. No matter what you're doing, you're going to look at reviews. And so how that that persona or that consumer perceives the content that you provide through all your channels, hopefully you're building a brand, and it's a living, breathing ecosystem, right? And that people want to be engaged in and be a part of. And so I think we've seen content change over the years, where it used to be pumping out lots of content was the goal, and now people are inundated with content. So now it's strategic content, and how you're doing that, and how you're building your brand, and how you're connecting your brand through all your different social media channels. And then, are you analyzing it? Are you understanding your audience? Are you, you know, working well with your traditional marketing and your paid advertising, with your social media organic marketing? Does that align with your vision of your brand? You know, if you're posting things that don't really align with who you are, is that making sense for the client? Are you getting brand confusion? I think when you think of content marketing, that's really where it falls. And there's a lot of ways to digest content marketing, whether it's podcasts or videos or social media, white papers, gated content, no matter how you're doing it. But I think the question you have to ask yourself is, do people want to digest it? You know, anything is digestible, but do they want to consume it? Or are they annoyed with it? Or is it the same message over and over and over? And we've seen companies do that, where they think that they found a stick, they stick to it. And so how do you engage that to where people want to become your fans and want to be evangelist for you and want to be a part of your brand? And so I think it's the how, and I think it's very different. And I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. You're obviously the demographic, your psychographics, the generation that you're going after. Gen Z consumes content much differently than millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers. So I think you have to be able to try to understand how all that works, and are using the channels appropriately. So when we look at content marketing, those are a lot of questions that have to be asked and understood. And then the resources, does the client have the resources to participate in content? Because not one person can do it. It has to be strategically laid out and understood, and there has to be a plan. It's a long-term strategy. You're not going to have some waterfall moment of a couple of months of everything is you know, pie in the sky game plan. It takes time to build it. So those are things that we lay out with our clients, and Priscilla, I know, does a great job. I follow Priscilla on a lot of platforms of doing those things. And so the ones that are doing a really good job, people want to follow it and want to be a part of that. And I think that's the goal that every business is really looking for, is how do they develop that themselves?
Yeah. So. Yeah. I think, Drew, most of the things that you're saying really points at the underlying truth that both you and I know, and that is that the customer is now in control. We are no longer, as companies, in control.
Yeah.
And so, to Drew's point, when he started, it was saying, you know, what do you do when you don't know something, or what do you do when you don't have something and you want it? This is the answer.
Yeah.
So the fact that people do this means content. So however that works, I will say an interesting statistic is that, and I specialize really in B2B world. And so my, you know, anything I share really is going to be highlighted from there. But we know that the B2B buyer averages reading 14 pieces of content before they make a decision. And so my question to my clients is always, well, how many of those 14 pieces that they read belong to you?
Yeah.
Because, you know, to Drew's point, yes, everybody's inundated, but who has the quality information, who's built that rapport, and who has really embraced that customer love strategy, which is, to me, at the core of content marketing. Do you love that client so much that you have built a pathway that actually helps them? Yeah. You know, along the journey. And I think we, you know, Drew and I could probably joke around all the time about things people ask us to put on their websites. Well, we started in 1993. I'm like, okay, already, I don't care. You know, that can't be your content because I don't care, right? So what does your most ideal client care about, and then let's, start our conversation from there. And I think to Drew's point about, our business now is our website. It's the old adage of, where should you bury a dead body? On the second page of Google, because ain't nobody ever going to go look there, right? So that is 100% the point of not only, how you go, the tactical beauty of, Drew has an entire room full of people who know tactical, how to do it. But it is also what Drew and I are sharing today is the why of it, because they're in charge. So the sooner you recognize that, the sooner you get your game plan together, based on that truth, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah.
I think that's an important point, that your consumers are now in charge of your brand, and
Mm-hmm.
you can see that a little bit, but yeah, we're not as in control as we used to be as marketers. So those are great points. Thank you so much. Each of you have a different journey, a different path that you took to get into content marketing. Can you help share a little bit about how you got where you are now, what led you into content marketing, and just some knocks maybe that you had along the way?
Sure.
We could fill up a couple hours with knocks along the way.
Okay. Well, let's talk about how you got there anyway.
I know for me, one of I'm proud to say this, but my dad was playing golf one time and said, "Hey, do you want an internship with this new magazine called 417 Magazine?" This was back in 2003 when it was a stapled afterthought magazine. And I got to start talking with Gary Whitaker, and it was when there was about 7 of us. And I think that's when I first really fell in love with marketing and content marketing, is just how to get people to connect through to your brand. So back in the old school days before the internet was what it is today, how do you connect there, and how do you grow from that standpoint? So my journey started there. I left and came back. I don't know if people remember Go magazine, but one thing that I did a good job of is selling something that didn't exist. So I did a good job of selling the first 417 Bride, the first 417 Home. So Gary wanted to launch a college magazine called Go Magazine. So I sold that and had some success with it. And then eventually I ended up in Miami, Florida, and St. Louis working as an agent. But 2015 rolled around. I wanted to come back home. I was the boomerang, missing Springfield, my family. And Gary said, "Hey, we're launching a new magazine called Biz 417. Would you be interested in come back and helping us sell it?" And I said, "Well, let's talk." So we did. And so I've always been drawn to the marketing side, and then getting into digital, seeing the different avenues that you can take with digital, and see how that's evolved. And just with SEO and how Google identifies relevant content, how that has changed from 2017 to 2020 has been enormous. And I think it's been interesting to see. And I think we've learned that you have to be ahead of the curve in this industry a lot, because we're seeing a massive shift in how people consume content over the last 10 years. It's been incredible how things have changed. And I think that a lot of the clients that we work with that are in front of that, knowing how things are changing, it's some interesting conversations, because how they used to do things is very different than how it's going to be in the next 10, 20 years. So, and that took me to where we're at today. And so our world is content marketing. I take credit for this, but my team they come up with ideas, and we're talking about this stuff all the time. And so that's where a lot of my knowledge comes from them. So I kind of steal their ideas and get on these and talk for them, but they really are the brains behind it. So.
Yeah, well, I come at things from definitely a revenue perspective, and I'm sure Drew does too. It's just like talking about it from some of the different angles where we come from it. But I owned, and I still own, a credit card processing company. I don't spend a lot of time running that, but the reason why that's relevant here is that I was having backroom conversations with people about their revenue. Why, even for example, why do we care how much we pay for credit card processing? Well, I tell you what, if you're having such high revenue, it feels that you're printing money in the back. Ain't nobody care about, how much you're paying for credit card processing. It's when times are tough that people start looking, what am I paying for this service? What am I paying for that service? So my approach to things with businesses was always to take the consultative approach and say, well, wait a minute, okay, we could lower some prices, or we could lower some fees, we could lower all kinds of things, but my goal would be, why don't, if after being with Little Bird, I hope you could double your prices and everything would just move on accordingly, right? That should be the goal. You could build a very established and a very highly sought after brand and not be sitting here worrying about the cents. And so I came at it from the approach of looking at it from the money. And now our very mission is that Little Bird Marketing is a digital content firm that creates firm and sustainable systems for lead generation. And we've developed a proprietary system called SOAR, which is strategic, organized, accountable, then repeatable. And it's the lifeblood. It's the full look at the content, annual content calendar based on what is the strategy. And the strategy, as I mentioned, is that customer love. What do the customers want? Let's only do things that the customer wants, not what the boss's niece wants, right? Like, we're going to quit, we're going to start ignoring that, and we're going to do what the customer wants. And we're going to base that into a plan that always leads to a sale, but a sale not in a salesy pitch. It's a sale that was just helping you. You wanted to get to that sale, let me get there. And I know we all have that frustration with some companies that we're trying to give money to, and they make it so hard. I'm like, why you make it so hard? I don't understand that. And so for me, content should be a way that we easily give out our valuable expertise to someone who is actively on a journey toward their goal. And can we help them there? And also, if that turns out to not be their goal, how can we get them off this path? Salesy crap is stuff that keeps people on the track when that's not really their end goal, right? That's when that stuff works. So it should be, I think, very good content should get some people somewhere, and it should get other people's off the track completely. That is a great content marketing system.
Priscilla, are you in a niche area in your content marketing? Do you find yourself in a niche area, or are you more of a generalist?
No, we're definitely a niche area. You mentioned, like, I have a degree in cultural anthropology, so I get these like social science nerds. It's really awesome. I think they're fantastic. But I stumbled into speaking at a market research event, and I traveled the world speaking. In fact, when COVID hit, I was on a stage in Amsterdam, and it's like, that little speech bubble, like the thing was still floating over my head that I had just said. If your teams are not already social influencers using your content to gain your share of voice, then you are already behind. I got down off that stage and heard the word COVID for the first time, right? So I am constantly in rooms speaking to market research firms, which is interesting, but it's become our niche. Our niche is B2B, but more specifically, we're heavily invested in the market research space. So people doing interesting data, behavioral science, eye tracking, it's an interesting niche, but we're definitely not a generalist, but I think anything in the B2B space, our team absolutely has a very good system that understands that it's not about $3 widgets, that many times, my clients are getting like Netflix as a client, Pepsi, they work for Mars, so, these can be anywhere from $50,000 purchases to 350 or, $750,000 or something like that. And so these aren't small purchases. These have to be meaningful. They have to have built rapport within their content. They're not just going to hand over $50,000 to someone who just happened to come up in a Google search.
Those days are over.
No,
Drew,
exactly.
Drew, talking about niches, is your shop more of a niche shop or a generalist? And also, Priscilla gave up SOAR and some other interesting tidbits of her. Do you have anything ownable that you'd like to share? Any positioning or ownable thing along with the niche?
Sure. We would consider ourselves more of a generalist agency. So we are full service. We help do pretty much everything you could think of. From videography to photography. We do media placement. We didn't start out that way. We started out as focused on digital marketing. So we're a Google Premier partner that specializes in Google ads, paid ads. What we've evolved to, though, over the years is we do inbound marketing as well. And I know Priscilla does that. And what inbound marketing is also considered content marketing, right? And how we do that, though, is there are many ways to drive traffic to your website. Like I said earlier, to your storefront. Whether you've got boots on the ground sales reps and you're B2B, you're doing trade shows, you might be doing programmatic, you might be doing traditional media, whether it's a local business journal, billboards, you may be doing paid ads with Google Ads, you may be putting a lot of money into your SEO, or maybe you have amazing social media channels where you have people posting tons of content and getting people driving traffic there. We can track all that traffic, but what happens is when people come to your website, typically 97% do not convert, right? They come to your site and they leave. And there's strategies around that to get people to come back, right? So we have retargeting, and we've all been followed around and seen how we've been retargeted, right? With display ads and other ads where it pops up in your feed. But the other layer of that was where we feel like inbound and content marketing comes into play. And that what that is tying it to a CRM, having some type of buyer, some type of journey that a client is working through where you're bringing value to that client. And what Priscilla was talking about is very true. Gone are the days of email blasts. Google will blacklist you if they feel like you're spam, and they'll take your domain and they'll blacklist your emails to where you end up in spam if you do too much of that. So it's really important that people are selecting to opt in to your content. That's really, really important in today's day and age. And that's very different than what it used to be. And so it's important to how we work through that and how we create personas and understanding your market and the segments of your market. You may have different buyers personas, and how that works through your website and how it all works together in one big flow. And then from there, you can start just dissecting things from a standpoint of what we call marketing qualified leads and MQL. That just because Tim comes to my website and opts into one of something that I'm doing doesn't mean he needs to be reached out to right away, but he's a marketing qualified lead. But as we send Tim content, he may open up things. And as he opens up things, we may get more information from Tim. And he may select boxes that say, are you this age or that age, or are you a business owner? But eventually we develop a buyer's persona that if Tim opens up enough content, he would switch over to what we call an SQL, a sales qualified lead. So where now he's an actual legit lead for me as a business owner that we want to reach out to. That's really helpful for your high-end niche-y businesses where we've done Google Ads and we don't want to answer every single lead that we get because they're not all a fit for us. So as you really want to work through that funnel to make sure that those leads are more solid, there's a lot of strategies to that, but it is really based off of your content and how you're delivering that content, how it's living on your website. Is your website a conversion machine, meaning people can easily access it? So there's a lot of questions that you have to kind of unravel to make sure that you're having success with those pathways.
I think it's about listening to things that are changing because, Drew and I have been through a lot of changes in content marketing already. And, gated content, whether people have a fatigue with putting their email address and giving up their privacy all the time, in order to get your information, you have to be very sensitive and you have to look at your own measurements. And I know a lot of people come to me screaming about, well, what KPIs and what are best practices and all this kind of stuff. And that's fancy to talk about and I like it, but it means nothing unless I know where you've been and where we're going, because stats for me may be completely different for someone else. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when people start spouting off to me that they're talking about KPIs and they want all this reporting and all of these, all of this tracking first before they've gone and done strategy. I'm very concerned. Mm-hmm. So all of the KPIs are to me the very last step, because we have to be thinking, what is changing right now? Video used to work a particular way. It's been morphing how it's changed. It operates differently algorithmically on different social media platforms than it does even on Google. Learning like the changes of what's going on with Google and how it's ranking your page. There's just so much there, but even there's just the human element that people now don't necessarily want to give up their email for every single piece of information. So how are you going to understand that and really empathize with your most ideal client and help them through a process in a way that builds rapport, even if that means you have to give away a little bit of the candy, before they want to buy.
Mhm.
I think that's where we're going to go next is the candy. We've talked a lot in theory, but let's talk about how to do this. And Priscilla, if you could start, we want to know, how to get a share of voice, talk about thought leadership, and how do you win in content?
Mhm. Well, I've said it a million times, I'll say it again, but our entire system at Little Bird Marketing is predicated on absolutely solid persona work. If you have not stopped for 2 days and worked with a consultant and actually developed your most ideal client personas, then I don't know what you're doing in marketing. I really don't. Because I don't write a single tiny, 2-sentence social media post or a 7,000, word ebook or create a quiz or write a 1,500 word blog. I don't do any of those things without going back and saying, what's going on in the world of this most ideal client? What it was interesting and important to them. And so a lead magnet, what is it that, what is that valuable information we're giving out has to be based on that strategy. But technically what things it can be, I really love, quizzes. I happen to like quizzes a lot in the B2B world because they're overused in the B2C world, but they're underused in B2B. So there's some opportunity there, right? We're people, even though we operate in our own, maybe I'll take a BuzzFeed quiz over vacation, right? But then I come back to my job and I'm serious behind my marketing CEO desk or whatever, but I'm still a human that may still be interested in getting a quiz about maybe my knowledge about behavioral science, or maybe my knowledge or maybe even to help me understand what is my own writing style. Like, so whatever the quiz can be, it's about saying, what information would be helpful right now to the most ideal client. So trying to figure out those nuggets and then package them in whatever way you think would be interesting, and then looking at the stats. We say, I will give this one general idea out. If you are creating content that sells, as far as a gated piece of content, I feel very strongly you need to be at a 20% conversion rate. Otherwise, you don't have something. Nobody's listening. Nobody's interested. So if you get 5 or 10%, you might have an idea. Past 10% of a conversion rate, you have something, but it's not right. You need to go back and tweak it. But once you hit a 20% conversion rate on some piece of content out on the internet, oh my gosh, please don't touch it. Just leave it. Don't break
mess it up, right?
Yeah, exactly. Don't even look at it wrong. Is that helpful? Is that where we're going with that, Tim?
Yeah. Drew, talk a little bit, share a voice, thought leadership, how to win.
Yeah, the hard part about this conversation, I think, more than anything, is there's so many ways you can go, right? So I think a couple quick nuggets, if there's anything that anybody was able to retain from this, is the average attention span is less than 8 seconds. So we have, the goldfish has passed up the human as far as the attention span, and you can look it up on Google, and of course everything is true on Google. But so I think as a marketer in content, you have to realize that the attention span is not there, right? And so when you're creating content, you have to make sure that you understand that. So best practices, if you notice, a lot of short videos, 15 seconds or less. Some piece of content needs to be quick, punchy. Doesn't mean you can't come back with retargeted content that's a little longer, because now you've got a fan, right? But if you want to get that engagement and you want to get that interest, it's got to be quick and to the point. So we're finding that some of the ways of winning are, like Priscilla said, quizzes. How do you engage? Interactive, GIFs, memes, some of these quick, short, simple things, short videos are the way to win. There's so many different items out there, the 4 E's and all of these things. I say it's the 3 E's. It's educate. If you're not doing one of these 3 things, you're probably failing with your marketing, content marketing. You're either educating, you're entertaining, or you're engaging. It's got to be one. It's got to really fall in one of those 3 items. And what I mean by that is, not everybody can be fun and goofy and entertain, right? So your brand voice has to matter. So if your brand voice, if you're a financial firm, are you going to be one out there goofy and silly whenever you're trying to, your clientele, you're trying to invest millions of dollars, and you got to take that serious, right? So you're not going to be goofy and silly with your voice. So you want to fall in that line of education and helping people to engage, because I'm learning something from you. How do you do that? Case studies, right? Awareness, engaging them in some way that they can learn how to do this. Another thing goes with that, and this is something that I pull from 417, is 417 built their brand on refrigerator journalism. Top 5 restaurants, top 3 this, top 5 this. That still holds true to this day. We've all been there when we flipping through Twitter and we see a top 3 something. We may not be that interested, but what do? We skip the paragraphs and we go to the top. We look at the 3, right? We all do that. And we want to know what those top 3 things are. And it could be top 3 best lakes, whatever it is. But that's what you call refrigerator journalism, where you would cut it out back in the day and you put it on a refrigerator. That still applies to our content. So quick, digestible, short, educating, entertaining, or engaging, falling in line with some of those items. That's how you're winning in today's day and age, is if you're making sure that you're trying to be self-aware and fitting into one of those categories with how you're delivering your content.
There's the content calendar, coming up with the content. Let's talk about, trends, predictions, who you admire, who you follow, and why, in order to build your content calendar to promote. Drew, can we start with you on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the trends that I think that we're finding, there's a couple things to consider. User experience, you hear that term a lot, but it matters. And what that means is your client's client, right? What's important to them? So be thinking along those lines, not what you think is best for your client, but what the client is looking for, how they're engaging in that website and that journey. Super, super important. And understanding Google makes the world go round. They own about 93% of all search engine market share. So Google has what it's called the EAT method. They're looking for content that fits expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So it's really important as Google changes their algorithms, which they change 400 to 600 times a year, to make sure that you're fitting into one of those things. So how do you dominate as an authoritative figure online? And it's trustworthiness and expertise, and that's good content, well-researched content, infographics, tying your social media channels together, having a video, but the video has to be transcribed, right? And making sure that user journey is transcribed correctly. You can't have a video with 400 words below it. It's got to be transcribed in the correct way. So understanding that user journey, call to actions, web accessibility is something to consider in the future as well, where are you compliant with disabilities? And you're going to start seeing more and more mobile-friendly websites as well, be quicker, but also be easier to read for all different ages and all different types of people as well. So that's a big trend that you'll be seeing over the next 5 to 10 years. Is your website accessible for disabilities? So those are some major trends that I think we're seeing, and I kind of touched on the others, but as far as making sure that your content feeds into there's a term for it too. One last term that Google uses, it's called your money, your life. So Google, health, finances, and state of mind. So creating content around your money, your life is really what Google is highlighting there too. So your money, your life, the EAT method, those are 2 things that Google focuses on, and then making that content really quick and digestible as well. And your user experience, that would be, I would say, one of the biggest trends that we're seeing as we work through websites.
Well, for me, I don't know about so much on trends. I will say there's a trend for people to be talking about thought leadership and how does our company get share of voice. And specifically, I work in B2B world, and the stat for us is that 93% of those buyers want to work with the #1 acknowledged expert in that field. 93% of them want to work with that one. So how do you become that one? And so where the trends that I'm watching and I'm looking out for, how are people actually getting their thought leadership out there in an interesting way, not just buying an ad saying, hey, I'm a great keynote speaker for productivity. It's like, okay, you can buy an ad. Anybody, it's free to buy an ad, to actually start the account. You can spend as much as you want. So that's paid media. But I see trends happening in that earned media side of thought leadership. And I think that people are finally taking that seriously, enough so that this, to me, the most important mindset shift that I try and get across with my clients, and that's what makes them ideal for me, is that they stop thinking about these one-off pieces of content, right? We need to understand what's our wheelhouse, and Google, to Drew's point about understanding how Google works, Google calls those topic clusters, right? How do I let Google know exactly what is my area of expertise, right? So for example, someone comes to me and says, oh, Priscilla, we want to write a blog about, we had a cook-off. It's really great personal, like employee engagement and employee morale boost. And we're going to do this blog about how we did this cook-off and it's really fun. I'm like, no. You're not posting that on Google. You're posting that on an email you want to send out to your team. That's fine. But you have to start understanding, if you put those recipes that we all had at our last, corporate gathering on your blog, now Google's thinking, oh, so are you a cooking site? So I think the trend in that I'm looking for in thought leadership is how people are really understanding and working with Google to do that. And the other big trend, which actually Tacey is on this call with me, Tacey, it works. She's the VP of digital transformation here at Little Bird Marketing. She and I teach around the world. We bring cohorts of thought leaders through a 12-week program where they learn how to wield social influence and build serious networks. And I think the trend that I'm seeing and that I'm watching out for is, how do we actually take thought leadership and get that where that's completely tied with amazing content that Google understands, and we get social influence where we are building a network, and that is translating into digital dominance for your brand. Because think about this, it's very expensive to pay me, let's say, to write 24 blogs for you. But let's say you have 100 employees and you get them all to write 2 blogs, 1 social media post a day, 1 tweet a day. Let me just tell you the exponential number of content that you can create if you actually connect the social influence of your own team, if you upskill that team and bring it into agreement and into sync with your content marketing plan. That's digital dominance. And so all of the trends I'm looking for are, how can that actually work for your company to where you become the obvious choice? I want people to jump to the conclusion that I'm the only person who can help them if they are my most ideal client.
Thank you, Priscilla and Drew. We're going to open it up for questions. I've asked a lot, but I know that you have some things on your mind too. So before this hour gets away from us, let's open it up to other people to ask questions. So turn off your mic and ask away, or raise your hand and I'll call on you, however you want to do it. Anyone?
I'll just say, while we're waiting on that, I noticed a lot of people put their links for their LinkedIn and Twitter handles.
Yeah, that's great.
This group, this club is only as good as we get connected and stay connected. And I truly believe that collaboration is the new competition. I believe in total abundance out there, and we all in different, you may even see that Drew and I may feel that we're competitors, but we're not. Like, we could get together and really, sharpen each other. This is what is going to make content marketing and elevate marketing in general in this entire region. So we really need to work together. So please reach out to someone on this call.
So do we have questions for Priscilla or Drew? Anyone?
Somebody asked one that will really stump Drew. Come on.
How about a fun one? Who gets the vote for the best background in our videos? There's like Priscilla, Wendy, and Chuck look like they have the best ones to me.
I like Chuck's license plates back there. That's pretty cool. But I do want to live in Stephanie's house, so I'll be right over to move in.
Okay, Erica asked, how do you deal with the algorithms pushing organic content down. Drew, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think that question would stem another question where algorithms that are pushing, so Google's algorithms that are meant to push organic content down, that goes back to, this gets a little bit in the weeds with each landing page. But so Google rates every single landing page on every website with a quality score, just like you rate a movie, 1 to 10. And those quality scores matter, and that's how Google, there's a lot of varies. I'm trying not to get too weird with it. With your Google ad program, that's how the demand and the keyword cost is for your ad. So take it back a little bit. And no matter how great your content is, no matter how great your video is, no matter how clever or quippy your quiz is, or no matter what you do online, if that experience, if that client clicks on that ad and they go to your website and that content, and that is not a good experience, and Google has given you a 2 quality score out of 10 or 3, it's not going to rank and push, that algorithm will not push that up. And it will, or if you're paying for those ads, you're going to pay through the roof to get someone to that landing page. So what does that mean? Your landing pages need to have relevant content. Well, what's relevant content? It needs to be based off keywords that people are actually searching for online. It needs to have the alt tag, the images need to be aligned. There's a lot that goes into every single page on your website for Google to want to push up your content. So if you see your organic content being pushed down, most likely, I'll give a simple example of that. You have a pest control company, and you have this entire piece of content built around mosquitoes. How annoying are mosquitoes? You have a clever video, you have a great ad, people click on it and they go to a landing page, and guess what? The word mosquitoes is not on that landing page. Guess what Google's gonna do? They're gonna squash that down, because that's not a good experience for the user. They're there to find something out about mosquitoes. And so if you think that that's going to thrive and do well with all the other competition out there, with all the content on mosquitoes, you're sorely mistaken. So there's a lot that goes into that, where Google has a lot of different algorithms. And that's just one. So if you're seeing that your content's being pushed down, there's probably 1,000 different factors, but one of them could be the quality score of the landing page that people are going to.
I would say too, when was the last time you went to your web page as a human? I'll leave it there.
I'm just going to lay that out there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Point taken. Other questions?
I got one in here from
Here we
Haley.
go.
What are some of the most important things to consider when it comes to accessibility and web design? This is interesting, because I'm sure any of us in our field right now, how many emails have we gotten last week about one of our websites that we build is potentially getting sued for accessibility? Anybody else with me? Because I'm tired of hearing those. There's a lot of people out there trolling right now. A lot of them are scams. There are very few of them that are legit, but there are firms out there that are wanting to, quote unquote, make your website ADA certified. And they are pretending that there's some kind of an entity about ready to pass you a fine. The reality is that there are a very few things. There's contrasting colors. There's like Drew mentioned, alt tags. There's just a few very specific things that need to be done that they're not a $10,000 fix, no matter how much they try and send you a letter saying it is. So I would say get it with the reputable web designer, web firm. Drew does them, we do them. There's probably other people in the AAF group who does it. But really, whenever you're looking at that for accessibility, I would say just get a second opinion, because other people, and ask for a list of exactly what they're going to fix on your website. But really, if you think about what they're looking for, is if I click somewhere, or like would someone with disabilities be able to, number one, read it? So contrasting colors, things that make it very hard for people with low visibility to be able to see what you're doing. Sometimes that's a small fix. But also, I was in a meeting where Microsoft actually showed us, they had a survey online and they sent it out and they had it on their website. and it was a killer for people with disabilities. The person who was reading it, if someone is completely blind and there's an audible function that they're using, it was horrible. Like there's no way you could have taken the quiz. It was like we were just all in the room horrified and laughing. And they of course put it out there as one of their failures, and then they showed everybody how they fixed it. So again, it's just like when was the last time you looked at your website, and you need to see it from someone else's perspective. But I would just say on accessibility, get a second opinion from somebody before you go spend a bunch of money.
Well, one thing on accessibility real quick too is it's impossible to have 100% accessible
Compliance.
compliance. And so that's something important to know. And so a lot of times if there is a threat of lawsuits, knowing that there's a game plan in place that considers remediation, and just making sure that you're aware of it and that you're working towards something if you ever do have that threat. But that is, I think, one of the biggest things is if you hear someone say, we can make your site 100% accessible, it's just not possible. There's too many disabilities. It's impossible to feed and to fit all of that. So, and the true compliance knows that too. There's AAA rated, AA rated, there's ratings that you can go to. So those are, like Priscilla said, I would do your thorough homework, talk to the right people that are working through that and understand the true lawsuits that are happening, because some of them are frivolous, some of them are legit wanting people to be more compliant with disabilities. So it's kind of wild west right now with how that's all shaped.
If you're a designer, a lot of the tools are implementing accessibility within the tools. I know in XD you can do color, you can do a color check for accessibility and those kinds of things too.
Yeah.
Hey, here's another question about keywords. What about when follow up? What about when you target competitor keywords? The example that Erica gives is higher ed trying to pull from another college. Do you want to talk about keywords?
Sure. I think one of the big questions would be competitor keywords. Are they branded keywords or are they not? So I think the conversation on that would be targeting a branded keyword would be targeting the universities, things like that. I think that's where that conversation gets a little different. But a competitor's keywords where if it's more generic, then I think that's where where I would want to ask that question, because there's trademarking. There's ways so like with Google, for an example, you can't trademark a city, right? So if you have your branded keyword is a city, an example of that would be like say Springfield Signs. There's a company name called Springfield Signs. If you say we're the best Springfield sign company in the city, there's issues there, right? And so there's a lot of different conversations that can be had with how you're targeting keywords. But if you're targeting, hey, we want to build a deck, right? Then that's where quality score comes in, where if you have the better experience than your competitor, and it's more engaging, and you have a higher quality score than your competitor, you'll pay less for those keywords than what your competitor pays for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll end it with this and say, deck brings back a hilarious story of a client. We were talking to them as a prospect, and they had a company who obviously didn't know what they were doing, working on something where they created like the composite wood to create decks, right? So you can build your own deck and buy this amazing composite that lasts forever, blah, blah, blah. They had given that to an SEO web firm and said, hey, we want, all the traffic for that, but they couldn't understand why it didn't convert, $35,000 a month in keyword stuff, when it turns out that, they were using deck plans. And the people who were searching for deck plans are not people who were looking for deck plans to build a deck, but someone who wanted to know the deck plan of the cruise ship for the cruise that they were taking. So you want to think long and hard and have a strategic partner about keywords and understand you may own it, but are you sure you want to own it?
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you all very much. I don't see any other questions, and I know we wanted to end a little bit early so people could grab a sandwich or whatever on their lunch hour. I'd just like to thank both Priscilla and Drew for joining us today to talk about content. There's going to be another Lunch and Learn next month. Josh Sullivan and Meg Wagner are going to speak about illustration and design, which should be exciting. You'll see some emails on that. I was excited to see faces join that I recognize and names that I recognize, even if your cameras weren't turned on. So that was exciting for me, and just wanted to thank you for letting me be a part of this too. So if you have a topic that you want to be considered for a Lunch and Learn or would just love to speak, to be heard or whatever, give one of us a shout out and we'll try to get you on the agenda. So for the AAF and the Ed Club, Priscilla and Drew, thank you. And thanks everyone for participating.
Awesome. Have a great day. Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.